This is Reality Dispatch, written by Jim Mins.
The dishes had stacked up in an unacceptable pile, one upon the other, as Rebecca washed them one by one. She was time poor. The kids had been dropped at school, and she had a 15-minute window to get the crockery in the dishwasher and herself in the shower. Her train was never late. In fact, it sometimes left 2 or 3 minutes early, much to the annoyance of her fellow patrons at Kernot Station in the morning. She was 3 bowls away from finishing up when the water from the tap grew thicker. She was daydreaming out the window and did not notice the color change, but the texture was unmissable. She was shocked when she took a proper look at her hands and fingers, as bright green sludge had poured all over them and inside the remaining bowls. A portion had filled the sink, and there were splashes on her sweatpants. She turned off the tap instantly and dropped the bowls, racing over to the back bathroom to switch on the tap at the sink and wash off the sludge. As she did, more sludge began to pour at a measure and pace that felt as if it had done so 1,000,000 times before. She twisted the taps off, stepped over to the adjacent bathtub, and tested the taps there, again met with a fast-pouring green sludge that left its mark throughout the white porcelain. She shook off her hands to get them to resemble cleanliness, despite the lack of water, and drew a towel from the rack to wipe off the rest. "Hey Google," she yelled. "Stream Plainsville Public Radio," she requested, as the smart speaker erupted the local news bulletin. "Detectives say the house fire was suspicious and is being investigated as a possible homicide. Here is Janine Bradley with more," the voice from the speaker informed. Police, fire, and rescue along with ambulance services worked through the night to establish a crime scene around the Marsville Park Unit complex, as residents reported suspicious activity from one of the units located on the 7th floor. Neighbors say the man who lived there was friendly and outgoing, and they find it uncharacteristic that he would deliberately light such a destructive fire. Nonetheless, the commissioner has declared the unit fire a deliberate act, and detectives from the homicide squad have sealed the building off for 24 to 48 hours to conduct their investigation. "Janine Bradley, Plainville Local News," the speaker said as the reporter signed off. "Hey Google, switch off," Rebecca instructed. She walked over to her phone and pressed the keys frantically into a search bar. Green sludge from tap. No information was found that gave her a sense of understanding that what she was experiencing was a common phenomenon. She sighed. She was reluctant to knock on the doors of her neighbors. It was a desperate time. She needed a shower. She had figured she had missed her usual train. With a plausible explanation, she could justify her lateness. She just needed to understand what the reason was first. Stanley answered the door on the 8th knock. "Can I help you?" "Stan, it's Rebecca from next door." "Who?" Stanley leaned into the fly screen to get a better look at her, despite being less than a foot away. He opened the door after an eternity of lock-on latches. "Rebecca, from next door," she repeated as he finally swung the fly screen door forward. "Oh, yes. How are you, dear?" "I'm good. Listen, Stan, I'm having some trouble with my water. Is there any issues for you and Val?" she asked. Stan stared at her. "Water," she said. "You want some water?" he asked with a palm covering the back half of his left ear. "Yes, please could you pour me a glass?" she said, figuring it to be easier than explaining the real reason. She followed him into the kitchen area. Val was sitting at the breakfast bar, munching on toast, staring off into space. "Hi Val, how are you?" she asked in her most polite voice. Val did not give a response, and Stan didn't assist in the introduction, as he didn't hear Rebecca's attempts. He took a glass from the cabinet above the kitchen sink and held it under the tap as he poured his squeaky 1950s taps 30 to 40 times before the liquid began to flow. Just as suspected, the bright green sludge that had infiltrated Rebecca's pipes flowed through Stan and Val's as she watched her cup fill to the top. Stan took the liquid and turned to offer it to her, oblivious that its contents were unmistakably undrinkable. "Oh, Stan," she said, with a concerned look that was exaggerated. "Look, it's green and sludgy," she said. Stan looked at the glass in confusion. "What are you talking about?" he said. "Look, it's green and sludgy," she said again. Stan was confused. He stared at the glass intently and narrowed his eyes and still could not make out what she was talking about. He put the glass to his lips and took a big gulp that continued until the entire contents of the glass were down his throat. Sorry, love, I'll pour you another. I was thirsty myself, he explained. Rebecca was disgusted and almost gagged and thought it best not to do so on the unvacuumed carpet of her geriatric next-door neighbor, whom she had never visited. She ran out the front door without explanation, believing that Stan and Val would probably not remember their encounter anyway. She returned to her front yard and passed her hose that was unfurled from the weekend. She twisted the outdoor tap and pointed the hose at the flower bed in vain to watch as her roses were painted dark green. She pulled the nozzle away from the garden as soon as she could, running over to turn off the taps, but not before sludge had covered the entire outside facade of the house. She retrieved her phone on charge by the fruit bowl and began searching online for news reports of the infected water supply. None were mentioned, despite her extensive search, which included all the major and local newspapers through their online divisions. She then turned her focus to social media, checking the feed of the suburban community groups for Kernot and the surrounding neighborhoods. There were countless references to the festival that had concluded over the weekend, taking place at the local primary school. Notices of bikes that were for sale and pre-teens who were offering their babysitting services. Nothing concerning the water supply. She pulled up the keyboard function and began to write a notice. Is anyone else having problems with their water? I have had a green sludge coming through my pipes all morning, and so too have my neighbors. They are elderly, and I am concerned for them drinking this stuff. She sent it on and sat on the bar stools, hoping for a prompt response. She refreshed the page impatiently when none was forthcoming. Eventually, the euphoric red notice appeared in the top left corner to indicate activity on her post, and she jumped on it with haste. "You, gross, that's horrible," replied an unhelpful local. "Need a plumber," said another who had tagged a name next to the question in an attempt to bring a business transaction into the discussion. Rebecca wasn't sure, this was a local issue relegated to her water supply. The pipes of Stan and Val had confirmed this. She was reluctant to call on a plumber because of the cost associated and the pointlessness of the task. Not long after a third comment appeared. "Delete this post and send me a DM," it said. She frowned with intrigue. The image associated with the comment was of a woman who was with her 2 children, a trampoline off in the distance, their faces aglow in happiness. She trusted the image despite the ominous tone of the response. She did not delete her post, but she did DM as the person requested. Her name was Patricia Sinclair, and she had other active comments on the Kernot neighborhood boards. Rebecca trusted her naive instincts. "Hello, I'm messaging as requested," she began. "Are you having water problems too?" She could see the 3 dots appear instantly as the mystery person began to fashion a reply. "You are not supposed to notice, but yes, we are. Everyone is. Only they don't know it." Rebecca pulled up in front of the modest 3-bedroom fibro house on Novara Crescent, number 62, as explained by her new friend. "My name's Pat," she had instructed. Rebecca was reluctant to give out her address, and for some unexplained reason, Pat was eager to speak with her on the little information Rebecca had provided publicly. She sat the car on the curb outside their house and honked, as per instructions. A woman in her mid-30s made her way out the front door and raced over to the passenger seat. She sat down inside the vehicle in a hurry. "Don't say anything. I know this is weird. Just drive. Please." Rebecca put the car into gear and took off. Pat immediately began explaining what she perceived was a conspiracy with dangerous consequences that befell those who discussed it openly. "It's from the new reservoir of the river that feeds our supply. You know Kernot Dam," she said as Rebecca turned out of the street. "Drive faster," Pat erupted. Rebecca started to believe this to be a mistake. "Look, I'm not sure if... Are you okay? I just wanted information." "Just shut up," Pat cut her off. "Listen, I know I sound crazy, but this is what happened to me too. I put a post up on the forum along with my husband who saw it too. Now he's gone and I had to move heaven and earth to convince them that I didn't see it. I owe it to you because you can see it, and you must be going crazy like I did, and I I just wish someone told me the way I'm going to tell you." "Tell me what?" Rebecca yelled. "Turn left here," Pat instructed as they reached the peak summit of the hill that overlooked Kernot West, and the path grew cleaner on its way to the undriven, newly paved, newly enacted reservoir and dam. "Pull over here. We have to walk the rest of the way, otherwise they will see us, and it will all be for nothing." Rebecca reluctantly pulled the car over and followed Pat, who removed herself from the passenger seat first. She jogged over to a bush area that lined the steel fence. "This is the back end. The entrance is 600 meters up that way. There's a hole in the fence over here." "Trust me," Pat began, sludging through the brush and weeds like a kid on safari. Rebecca did her best to keep up, but was unprepared for the terrain. She felt her exposed feet in her sandals get cut amongst the shrubbery. They came to the gap in the steel fence, as mentioned by Pat, her new pal, who dived in underneath, not turning back to check on Rebecca's progress. "We need to hurry. They will be alerted to us if we stay too long." They marched on behind the fenced-off property that Rebecca knew belonged to the water board. They reached the peak of the mountains that overlooked the reservoir before it poured over into the dam receiver. In the center was a constructed crane, akin to a deep water oil rig, with a large hose going down the middle, into the water, and beyond. At the top, the green sludge was coming out of the funnel, and onto a water slide-like area, where it bypassed the reservoir, and onto another larger pipe, connected to the dam wall. "You see the sludge?" Pat asked. "I see it. What is it?" "No one knows. They get it from deep within the earth, deeper than any known water source. It's a newly discovered entity." "Why is it in our water supply?" she asked. "It's a hallucinogen. It can be used for anything. Replacement for petrol, for water, for food. We don't see that it's not what we think it is. That's what they are relying on." Rebecca was confused. Who is relying on? What is that stuff? An alarm rang out over the valley, echoing off the water that sat above the sludge below. It was the chime of war, refashioned for them, to announce their intrusion. "They know we are here," Pat yelled. "Run." She led the way back to the car as Rebecca frantically jumped over the sharp brushes and twigs to keep up. She knew this may be the only opportunity to find out the answer before Pat was removed from the equation. "Pat, tell me quickly, what is that stuff?" she asked in a puff. "No one knows." "Where does it come from?" "I told you, deep underground. Like, deep. Deeper than the deepest tunnel ever drilled before." "How do you know all this?" "My husband worked for the water board before they got to him." "Where is he now?" "Brainwashed." A digging machine rammed a nearby tree, cutting off their path towards the gate. A series of men in hazmat suits jumped from the vehicle and apprehended them both. Pat began screaming in a fit of rage. "No, I've already had it. No, you don't need to do it to me again," she yelled in frustrated anger. Rebecca's arms were clasped securely under the grip of the strong, faceless men who had her, one for each arm. She was completely helpless. Even if she stopped walking, they were strong enough to drag her with ease. "Where are we going?" she asked them fruitlessly. They didn't respond to her, nor bother looking in her direction. They dragged her to the back compartment of the truck that had bulldozed the trees. There were separate compartments for both women. Pat caught her eye before they reached the latches to put them inside. "Listen to me. When they inject you, everything will go back to normal, so you will be okay. Trust me." "Well," Rebecca began to ask, but stopped short of finishing her question. "Sometimes the hallucinations wear off, and then we can see things for what they truly are. That's what happened to you. The sludge cannot have a firm grip on you, because you are stronger than it. Most people are not, but you and me are." The faceless men opened the compartment and put Patricia inside. Rebecca frantically adjusted her head to ask a final question. "Why? Why all this?" she managed. "Control," Pat yelled back. "They want us to do things, crazy things. Crash our cars, commit crimes, rob convenience stores, set fire to our homes. It's like one big experiment," Pat yelled back. They closed the latch and Rebecca heard her yelling beyond the steel frame. "We will meet again, because it doesn't work for you. You are truly free. Just like me," she managed in a muffle behind the iron. The men opened the latch to the dark cabin, lifted Rebecca up, and placed her inside. They closed the door behind her and she heard the frightening sounds of the many locks that fitted with heavy burden. She was completely trapped. The engines ignited into a fierce roar and she was being transported to an unknown destination for an unknown purpose. She was thirsty.
For more stories of fact-based fiction, head to jimmins.substack.com.